All right, Matt, we are live streaming and recording, and you may begin whenever you like.
Very good. So welcome to the May 20th, 2021 meeting of CB6 Public Safety. I'm Todd Roberts, the chair of the CB6 Public Safety Committee, and this meeting is being called to order at 6:33 p.m. And tonight we're joined by CB6 District Manager Jesus Perez. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there's time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. Again, that's the Q&A feature, not the chat. Nobody has volunteered to take minutes tonight. Please raise your hand through Zoom if you are able to take minutes tonight. Of course, you've received the emails from the board office with the doodle sign-up sheet. For your convenience, a link will be posted in the chat right now. At the direction of the board chair, each committee meeting must have a designated minutes taker and a designated backup just in case. And then, of course, the board will distribute duties equitably and let you know in advance which months you're due to take minutes. So if you have not already filled out the doodle, please do so right away.
Looks like Susan is volunteering.
I'll take minutes. I'll take minutes.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. And so that brings us to attendance, and Jesus will conduct the roll call.
All right, I will call your name, and please unmute yourself and state that you are present. Andrew Gross.
Sorry, present.
Thank you. Yusuf Khalid.
Present.
Thank you. Matt Roberts.
Present.
Thank you. Frank Scala. Frank Scala. All right. Seema Shah.
Present.
Thank you. Sean Sherman.
Present.
Thank you. Susan Steinberg.
Present.
Thank you. And we have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Jesus. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you. Committee members, there's no objection. We will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. All right, committee members, the minutes from the April 15th, 2021 meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt these minutes as drafted. If you object to adopting these minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the April 15th, 2021 meeting are adopted and will be available on the CB6 website tomorrow. All right, I think you're all familiar with the ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. The chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you're having or to state in writing information that was already stated aloud on the record, such as an email address. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. We are required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of this meeting, so please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. That brings us to committee business. And as on the agenda, we have updates. We'll get reports from our police precincts, which we're trying to do on a quarterly basis within this committee. So they were here a few months ago to give us some updates. We'll hear the latest, and then we'll continue our discussion on police reform, which was referred back to us in the April full board meeting. Given the resolution that we brought to the board, there were some issues there, so we'll have a further discussion on that. However, within police reform, I want to steer the conversation away from the city's response to the state in that document that was written. It was, I think, we're seeing now that that was just a required document, and I'd rather steer the conversation more in terms of reality. So it'll be a question of, I think we should simplify the conversation. What do you like about what the police department is doing today, and where are there opportunities for improvement? So we'll get into a couple things with there. And unfortunately, I don't believe any of the elected officials responded to our request for information on the legislation with safety protocols for emergency service and essential workers, so we can decide if we want to table that conversation or if we want to take a position or not. So let's get to it. I think we have with us, I don't see anybody from the 13th precinct with us. They were invited and they agreed to attend.
Matt, we do have someone here joining us by phone. There's no names. I don't know if it's a member of the public or perhaps someone from the 13th. Let me, hello, call in, someone who's calling in. Can you identify yourself?
Hey, Matt. Hey, so this is Detective Arlotta from the 13th and my partner, Greg Kramer.
Hi,
how are you guys?
Thanks. So Detective Arlotta and Officer Kramer from the 13th precinct are with us, and from the 17th precinct, we have Sergeant Joe Leonard. So let's start with the 13th precinct. So if you guys just want to give us an update on where things are, any crime trends. I don't want to get too granular in a board meeting, but if you could just give us some high level information.
Not a problem. Right now, over the last 56-day period, we are higher in robberies, especially higher from last year because at that time, as we know, COVID was going on and nobody was really out. Our shoplifting that's what's leading the way, and like electronics, dwellings. We have 6 shoplifting gone bad essentially, where store security are stopping them, and they could pull out a weapon or just to act like they have one. Electronic devices are second in the way, as far as someone could be walking with like a cell phone in their hands, like that, and someone takes it out of their hands. Then we have that's 4 with electronics. There's 2 commercial, 2 pocketbooks, a bank robbery, 1 inside of an ATM, 1 inside of a residential building, 1 inside of a restaurant, 1 inside of a convenience store. Overall, as I said, we are up slightly from 2020 due to the fact of COVID. During the same period last year, we're up higher by 6 robberies, 24 compared to 18. Our assault, let's go into that. Those for the 56-day period, which again is 3/22 to 5/16, we have a total of 23. Of those 23, 7 of those assaults were on some kind of a police officer, a public servant, or traffic agent. There was 1 involving assault with a doctor, 2 EMS workers, and just 1 was a police officer and 3 traffic agents. And overall, assaults are up slightly, not by much from last year. And then for rapes in the area over the 56-day period, we are 6 versus 0 from last year, but most that's attributed to the hospital. If somebody turns up there and they don't know where it occurred, it automatically comes back to us, so we have to take the complaint report. Other than that, everything's good in the neighborhood. Things are getting back to normal here. A lot of our restaurants are back up and running. Our bar, everything's back up and running. I've been walking around, me and Vinny, and everything looks good here. Looks like we're getting back to normal.
All right, sounds good. Just a couple of clarifications. So within the assaults, do you have were the victim and perpetrator known in many of those, or are they unprovoked?
For the most part, they're known because, like I said, like some was on a doctor, some was on police officers, traffic agents, and stuff like that. There were no random assaults per se.
All right. And as far as the rapes go, I understand it's just a it's more location based as far as where they're actually being reported. But are those also known between the victim?
That we don't know because, like I said, we only get the number because like they're being reported at the hospital, so they're not sure. So we don't, after it's taken from us, it goes to special victims, and special victims handles from there.
Right.
It's not like it would just happen on the street and the person didn't know. It's, you know, it's more of like, it's where it's being reported because we're taking the report because they're going to the hospital and they don't know where the location is.
All right. Fair enough. So let's open it up to questions for the 13th precinct. We'll start with any committee members first, and then any other board members or members of the public. All right, seeing no committee members with their raised hands, we'll go to Jim Collins. Jim, you have the floor.
Hi, Detective. I noticed, well, two things. Did you have a cutback in radio patrol cars as a consequence of the defund the police budget?
No, at this point, we're still running
The same number?
the same amount of cars we have been.
Okay. I'm curious as to why every time I walk across 14th Street and 3rd Avenue, there is a radio patrol car parked outside of Duane Reade. I recognize that they have a very high level of shoplifting. And I presume that the car is there as a deterrent. But I'd also like to see that car actively on patrol. Does the NYPD still have the paid detail unit?
We do. So like that location it was high with some of these robberies, so that's why it's a deterrent there. So in our high crime spots per se, so like Target, Duane Reade will periodically post a vehicle there to deter.
I see it every day practically at 13th and, or I'm sorry, at 14th
Correct.
Street and 3rd Avenue. And I
Correct.
would think that, you know, we shouldn't be doing private security. The city shouldn't be doing private security for these guys. If there's a paid detail, I would think that both Target and Duane Reade could hire paid detail and let the patrol car cruise the neighborhood.
They do have paid detail also, but it's for our, you know, that's how we control the crime numbers, you know, to help prevent the crimes. We have to be a presence also.
I'm sorry, I disagree.
It's not taking away from answering calls and whatnot. So that's in addition to the cars that we have that are answering calls and preventing.
I'm just thinking with all the trouble that we see on 1st Avenue and 14th Street, that a patrol car there would be better deployed.
Okay, I'll bring that up to the commanding officer.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So just so everybody's clear here, again, let's keep this high level. If we have to get block by block, that's too granular for this meeting. You're gonna have to go to a community council meeting or a build a block meeting to discuss, you know, local block issues. But I will say in general, yes, it's always a fine line between, you know, babysitting, you know, certain drugstores that are hotspots for crime and paid detail. You know, every officer, every cop would love to have paid detail in most of these drugstores, but it's very expensive. And of course, the other side of the coin, who eats up most of the cost, a lot of that gets passed along to the consumer. So you got to look at that whole piece of that. Let's go to Susan. Susan, you have the floor.
I was just wondering if there are any hate crimes to report.
Not to our knowledge. No, we don't have any reported.
Thank you.
I will say on the subject of hate crimes, the 13th precinct did come up in a report that was issued. Jesus, I don't know if you remember the which organization that was that put out that annual report you passed along. But
Is the mayor's office for the prevention of hate crimes?
okay. Yeah, and the 13th precinct, I don't know if it's probably not a recent thing, but over the course of the past year or so, the past couple of years, the 13th precinct has popped up as one of the more active precincts, especially within Manhattan, but I think even citywide. So we may at some point hear a presentation from them.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a better date, because recently in the last couple of months, we haven't had any, I mean, I read almost every report that comes in every day. That's one of the things I do, and I haven't seen any hate recently at all. Not with everything even going on, you know, in today's world, I haven't seen anything. So if you guys had a better date, we could talk about that next time, and we could get into detail then about it.
Yeah, we'll send you that report that was published. I think it's more over the past couple of years that they were looking at. Andrew, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. More the hate crime part sort of reminded me, but this is more to the 17th. You know, I saw yesterday that there was, maybe it was yesterday before, but you know, there's obviously been a couple of demonstrations in our area. During the 17th, there was a demonstration. I saw the video of, you know, people getting beat up. It was a pretty, I thought, horrific street fight. And I'm just wondering if the 17th can comment on their posture right now in dealing with the street protests and ensuring that people are not being targeted, particularly for their religious or national identity.
All right, so we can segue over to the 17th precinct as well. We'll bring in Sergeant Leonard. I will say that, yes, there have been quite a few protests at the Israeli consulate on both sides with the activity going on in the Middle East. So I don't know, Joe, do you have anything you want to add on that?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, there's seems to be some daily and weekly protests going on, obviously, with the conflict in the Middle East. We're allowing people the right to peacefully protest. A lot of the protests are on 2nd Avenue. We're trying to make sure people are separated to give in their right and make sure everybody's peaceful. There has been some conflicts with the different groups, but we've been trying to maintain peace. There've been a few arrests. The other night by the precinct, there was a demonstration on 51st and 3rd. A large group congregated. They thought we brought people back to the precinct, which was inaccurate. Large scale group, you know, blocked the street for a couple hours, disrupting traffic. We maintained order. After a while, the group dispersed. But yeah, we're maintaining things. It's going to be, you know, an ongoing thing for a little while with the conflicts going on. But we're making sure people have the right to protest, but we're also protecting the groups, you know, as they do it too.
Can I just respond quickly, Matt? Is it all right?
Yeah, real quick.
First of all, I really appreciate all the effort that the 17th is doing to make sure that people can demonstrate peacefully. You know, I've, you know, in my day-to-day, I'm involved with this, and I've just seen on social media a lot of very disturbing video that came out of that incident, the one that you referred to at 51st. So I would just, you know, and I know that you guys, again, are doing all that you can, but I would just, for the benefit of the board, stress to be as aggressive as possible and making sure that people are not getting targeted on either side during these protests. And that you guys are, you know, aggressively policing that, because it's that video from 51st I've seen it is all over the country, and it is all over, frankly, it is all over the world. I'm seeing it everywhere. So I'm just noting that these incidents are having a very, very large ripple effect outside of our board. And again, with no, this isn't a negative to PD. I'm just noting what's going on.
No problem. Yeah, the other night too, we saw like a disruption. A lot of people were running. It looked like an altercation. We actually brought one individual into the station house because he got in the middle of the massive. So we protected him, removed him from the situation, brought him back to the precinct, made sure there was nothing, no injuries. We asked if he needed medical attention, and the gentleman was actually brought to his home to ensure his safety too. So we're trying to maintain peace, make sure everybody has the right to protest, but also make sure everybody's safe too, and, you know, getting home safely, and make sure our officers are safe too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so since we moved on to the 17th, I don't know, Sergeant Leonard, if you have any other updates or high-level comments you want to make? As far
Sure. Like the 13th precinct was saying, we're a little up in numbers just because of the difference in the year with COVID. We've had a few robberies lately. We've actually had a few bank robberies. One gentleman that did a bank robbery at TD Bank at 451 Lexington Avenue was actually apprehended the other day by a major case squad. We actually had two today down on the lower end in Sector Adam, 576 Second Avenue, another TD Bank, and 560 Second Avenue, Bank of America. We have a person of interest on that. Hopefully by the end of today, we might have a person in custody on that. So that's a good thing. Burglaries were up a little with commercials. We've actually had a few arrests in regards to that. Felony assaults were up a little bit, 7 to 5 from last year. A lot of it's domestic related, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend. There's been several arrests in regards to that. Our grand larcenies are up 35 to 25 from last year. A lot of it has fraud cases, a lot of it elderly people being targeted. My officers, the NCOs, especially in NCO Charlie and the other sectors, Boy and Adam, we try to do outreach, especially at the Build a Block meetings. Anybody that's part of a scam, we try to reach out to, make sure they know like the different rules and scams going on in the community to, you know, avoid things later. Unfortunately, the elderly get targeted a lot, so we're trying to make sure we do outreach with that. GLAs are up a little, 5 to 1 last year. Some of it's the mopeds being left on the street, but we're trying to do surveillance and stuff like that. So that's pretty much the updates for the 28th day for the 17th.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Now on the bank robberies, is it really just one pattern, or is this, you know, more of a trend?
So for the gentleman for 451 Lexington Avenue, I believe that was a Queens pattern. He was identified quickly within the day, and I was told this week he was apprehended. So that one should be closed out. This other individual, it was a 2-hit today, and he did one prior this week, but we think we have a person of interest. I don't want to say anything yet because it's still being investigated. But like I said, hopefully by ends day, we might have somebody in custody on that. So.
All right, sounds good. Any questions for Sergeant Leonard? All right, I think that's it. So thank you both, Detective Arlotta, Officer Kramer, Sergeant Leonard. Thank you all.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Yep, we'll do. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, sister.
All right. So on to agenda item number 2, which was officially labeled as a continued discussion of New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative state initiative that requires local police agencies, including the NYPD, to modernize police strategies and programs based on community input. So I think you guys all know what happened last month at the full board. We had a very broad resolution in general support of reform, not taking any specific positions. The board, wanted, put a lot of emphasis on this document that the city put forth to the state. I personally do not, and don't believe the committee should waste a whole lot of time on that. But I would certainly open up to the discussion to the committee members and any members of the public that are joining us. Let's simplify the conversation. What do you like about the police? And where do you see opportunities for improvement from a community District 6 perspective? So anybody have any comments they want to make? Mr. Collins. Jim?
I was one of the people who objected to carrying through the resolution because you guys had gotten it so late and there was really no read of the entire document. I prepared I spent about, a couple of afternoons on the weekend reading through the entire thing and looking at and compiling kind of a Cliff Notes version of the entire document. There's a lot of things in there that are very good and a lot of things that I support. But there's a lot in there also that kind of reeks of politics, and that I cannot, in this form, I cannot in good conscience pass it. My colleagues on the strategic planning committee will tell you that I'm a pretty hard grader with respect to these kind of reports and documents. There was an instance we had engaged a consulting group to write a report for us, and I frankly wanted to reject the entire thing. In this one, there are statements in here that, well, first of all, a lot of it is self-laudatory by the mayor, and a lot of it is, and I think I sent you all this, Matt.
By the way, your remarks were forwarded to the committee. So I don't know if they've had a chance to read it, but they certainly have received
Right.
them.
So they also got the summary, I presume.
Yes.
Okay. I cannot vote for this, or as a full board member, I cannot support this, and I would urge everyone to take every member of this committee to take a good read of it, or at least a good read of the outline that I prepared, the Cliff Notes version, as it were.
So Jim, let me just jump in here for a minute. So I just want everyone to understand the prior resolution was not an endorsement of this document or all the contents within. What we were really trying to do is say, yes, we believe that there's opportunity for certain reforms to occur, and we like the NYPD to work closely with the community board to implement any reforms. I think that was the thrust of the message that we were trying to send. It was, there were semantics with, document was being submitted to the deadline. It wasn't really, it wasn't, and as it turns out, that document is not as meaningful as we once thought it was going to be. So I don't want to put a whole lot of emphasis on there. I do want to, bring the conversation back to what do, from a community district 6 perspective, what do we want to see different? What do we like? What do we want to see more of? What do we want to see different? So I'll give you a couple of examples. So within the past 6 weeks or so, the NYPD has done a couple of interesting things. So one would be the graffiti cleanup that took place citywide. I believe it's like the 10th of April, where they really engaged with the community. It's the first of multiple events that are likely to occur. So they really engaged with youth, the kids in school, all seniors, really just go out and get rid of some of the worst graffiti in and around the districts. And the other thing that's was just announced recently is the Blue Chips program, which is actually it's going to be a summer basketball tournament for youth and also a mentoring program. So the mentoring program is just kicking off during the summer timeframe. So those are just a couple of examples. And by the way, if anyone knows of youth in the district that are interested in one or both of those, whether it be the basketball tournament, there's certainly opportunities for kids to play basketball. It's structured and run by the NYPD. There's certain dates. I can get you all the details if anybody knows of anybody that's interested. And same thing with the mentoring programs. I believe the ages they're targeting are like 12 or 13 to 17 there, which is really something that I think is important for us to understand is really just, from a lot of the meetings I've been in over the past few years, it's not so much an issue in our district per se, but there are plenty of districts across the city where kids are afraid of the police. And that needs to change. So I do want to give the NYPD credit for a couple of those initiatives. There's obviously a lot more work to be done, but I think those are good starting points. So I think from our point of view, we really need to focus on what are some opportunities to either better integrate with the community, This is not whether you like the police, hate the police. This is more of, what is policing in 2021, and where do we need to build for the future? So I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Well, there's a lot in pages 16 to 20 of the document that address a lot of that. The general headers are in the cliff notes that I sent everyone. This is under Roman numeral 2 that involve the community in training and education, immerse new officers in community training and education by expanding the People's Police Academy, and also to include, and this is one that I've advocated for quite a long time, and previously mentioned to the former chief of patrol, the fellow that resigned, I guess last year, to include customer satisfaction data in CompStat reviews, so that if there's an instance where someone is filing a police complaint of some sort, that there be essentially like a help desk, like you see in industry, where people will come back and they'll receive a telephone call or an online, an email saying, yes, I'm satisfied with the way the NYPD handled this, or I'm not satisfied, it's a continuing problem, et cetera, et cetera. The same as you do when you have a help desk issue with a computer, for example.
All right, so hold on. Let's hold that thought. Let's take that, and I think I do think that could be a viable means of reform that could be implemented fairly easily. It's simply maybe a community engagement survey that occurs on an annual basis, where local residents are surveyed. You can ask a whole bunch of different questions that can be tracked at a high level, and you can track that progress one year to the next. So committee members, any thoughts on something along those lines? I mean, I do agree that it's simply, I mean, in the private sector, you get rated on all kinds of surveys and data and stuff like that. So there's definitely, I do think that could be something that if we were to put forth a resolution to the full board, that could be something that we might want to ask for, is just really, what key areas, how are the police doing on a large scale, and what are they doing right? What would you like to see? And I think that over time might create a process that leads to something a little bit better, rather than politics and people shouting from both sides. Let's understand what people really think, not just the 2 or 3 people that scream the loudest, sort of thing. Committee members, any comment?
I mean, I'm sorry, this for members.
Let me just see if I don't want one person to monopolize the conversation here, but committee members, please raise your hand if you have anything you'd like to add on here. Do we agree, disagree? Yusuf?
Yeah, I think the idea of an NPS score makes a lot of sense. And I actually think there are certain city agencies that have a lightweight version of this already, when you kind of contact them for something. So I think that makes sense. 2 areas that I am particularly interested in, and they're really around good governance. One of them is how well is the NYPD kind of tracking and curtailing potentially unnecessary overtime, which I know was a big part of the debate last year. But just from a performance management perspective, right, I think that could be helpful. And it gets at some of the commentary from earlier in the meeting around, where a patrol car might be kind of loitering for potentially private security purposes, right, versus some of the other broader community goals that we have. So that's one. The other one, and the NYPD has done an okay job of complying to date, is just their ability to spell out in greater detail what types of technologies they're using, where they're using them, and what type of data it collects. And so the Post Act, I know, was passed last year, and they put out their initial kind of first report around that stuff. And again, it's the best the NYPD's done in many decades on that topic, and I'd venture to say it's probably above average nationally, but I think getting more granular on that is essential just for transparency purposes. So endorse the NPS idea, and think, going down further along those lines, having something around tracking and curtailing overtime, and detailing some of the surveillance technologies are 3 goals for me.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, overtime I know is very, there's a lot of there's a city budget, and then there's an actual amount of overtime that's exceeded. But I would say that we should definitely have overtime goals. Nobody really wants that. The city has to, be fiscally responsible at some point. But yes, we definitely need goals, but then there's 1,000 reasons, legitimate reasons why you wouldn't be able to reach those. Protests might be one of them. There's a lot of unforeseen things that cause overtime. But yeah, I definitely agree that, with budgetary, within budget, we all work within budgets. So we should definitely understand where that's coming from. But there's always going to be a certain amount of overtime. Otherwise, you'll be told you can't protest, you can't have a street festival, yada, yada, yada. So, but yeah, I do think that, but I do think that having, an NPS score or some sort of, overall satisfaction rating, every, whether it's a transit agency or, some of these other agencies across the city and state already have certain things, and most private businesses have some sort of score as well. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to kind of put that in. And I think you'd get engagement from the broader community, not the 30 or 40 people that just show up at community meetings from time to time. So I think that's something. One of my goals has always been get the community more engaged. So I think that could be something that leads us down a good path. I know Jim has done a lot of talking. To any other committee members have anything they want to throw in here? All right, Jim, back to you.
Just with respect to the patrol car at Duane Reade, what's happening there is they're kind of playing based on what the detective said. They're basically playing the statistics and trying to deter criminal activity at that Duane Reade to keep their numbers down. If they were, as I say, if Duane Reade is going to report all these crimes, so is Target, what have you. But I don't have any profits interests in either of those companies, and neither does the city of New York. If they need that level of security to protect their detail, they should pay for it. If they need a paid detail, let them get paid detail. If they want private security, let them get private security. They're just, for this purpose, they're manipulating the statistics. And I just wanted to add one other thing, was that in this outline, if you launch the neighborhood policing app and expand training so that sector officers have the same training as neighborhood coordination officers, so as to better, speaking of Community Board 6 level activity, that's one of the things that that we should pursue, making sure that all of the officers in the sector have the same kind of training as the neighborhood coordination officers.
So I think with regard to training, you're talking more, community integration versus like a training class, right? You want them to be more integrated.
Well, no, I'm reporting what's in the document.
I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah. So
that's on me. That's what's in the document.
All right, so again, I don't want to fall in this document, but I think, definitely that is one key thing and personally, as the community council president in the 17th, I do meet with the rookies as they come in. I do see opportunities for more, integration, not just as a rookie, or when you become an NCO, but I do think a lot of the patrol officers, they're busy on patrol because they're responding to 911 jobs. But I do think they should probably be, every officer should spend a certain number of hours in and around the community, talking to community members, maybe it's, an hour to a month, but I think you need that extra context of, really the other point of view. So I do see, I don't know if we want to call it training, but I do see, some goals to further integrate officers with the community. And I do see that happening a little bit with the graffiti cleanup and some of these other projects that are happening. But I think we can continue to do more of that. Andrew, you before.
I don't know how relevant it is in the detail here, but just because it was mentioned, I just want to say that I'm very pleased personally that NYPD is in the Duane Reade and other drugstores. I was attacked in one of them a few weeks ago and filed a police report of like a guy who was violently trying to attack me. And so in that case, the PD was not in that Duane Reade. And I go into them all the time and they're full of people who are, having all kinds of issues and very aggressive. And so I'm just noting that I was personally affected by that. I think it's very, very good that they're in those positions. I welcome them, especially in the evening when there's not a lot of people around. So just putting in my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely, that sort of ties back to our conversation last month about safety of essential workers. If you're in a drugstore for a short period of time to shop, what about the workers that are there all day? So we didn't really get any clear statistics. I did hear Detective Arlotta and Officer Kramer refer to a couple of incidents there, but I don't know, what percentage of crime that makes up. So I think we'll do some further research on that. I'll always circle back in the fall if we get any further clarity. But yes, so that's point taken there. Any other comments
They
on?
can always do that with paid detail, or they could do it with private security.
No, Jim, I understand.
It's deterrence.
Understand your point of view.
Simple deterrence. All
right, got it. So I understand your point of view, but that's up to the commanding officer to make that assessment. If 80% of your larcenies are occurring in one drugstore, you got to do something. Obviously, they're talking with the heads of security and trying to convince them to either hire security or hire paid detail. But that's, you're dealing with big corporations, between Duane Reade, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, you name it. They all have budgets, and they have to focus on their worst of the worst locations. Otherwise, you'd be paying 100%
So does
more.
the city.
Jim.
No, I hear you.
You're out of order. Thank you. You've made your point clear, but I just want to, that is not, there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes there. So committee members, any other points, or what do we want to put forth any recommendations to the full board on any of these topics? I know the document was a little confusing and a little complicated, but I think if we simplify the conversation, what are 3 or 4 recommendations that we could make out of this? I do think the tracking mechanism of NPS score or some satisfactory survey, some satisfaction survey that's conducted on a similar basis every year makes sense. I understand there's, people want more clarity on technology. I think they're starting to do a little bit of that. But there might be, that might be a question and an area where they would see room for improvement. Seema.
Matt, I just want to know, is it helpful for us to be making kind of individual point recommendations? And here's what I'm thinking, if they're going to pass something more comprehensive and we just comment on like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 elements of it, is that as impactful?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I wouldn't worry so much about, what documents are being written, what changes are already occurring. I think I would use this as an opportunity for this district and this board to, what are the key things that matter here? I mean, are trust an issue in Community District 6? Probably, maybe, but probably not as much as other areas. So I think that gives us an opportunity to kind of focus on, what would work better for, between the community and the police overall. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. It could just be, we like these things and we don't like these things. Yeah, I'm leaving it kind of open-ended. So, I mean, I think that the district and the board should have a voice in this. But there's obviously a lot of things that you can opine on.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Thanks for clarifying.
So other comments, anything? I think we have a few good things here that we could work towards, but I don't want to. It's really up to the committee. I know it's a big issue. It's complicated. It's not something that we can all. We can't necessarily just endorse a document. There's obviously some things you like, things you don't like, but it's really or we could take the summer and come back in the fall and see if there's other things to consider. So I'll leave it up to you guys. By the way, as of right now, we're not going to have a June meeting unless something comes up. So this would be our last meeting until September. Andrew?
Yeah, Matt, just my thoughts are that, look, I don't know. I think the ship has sailed, right? Like, like you're kind of like, maybe you're implying this, but I think we just need to wait and see at this point because, the recommendations are out. It's I think it's moving forward. If I'm not mistaken, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but, I'm not sure that our insertion now is going to be as felt as if we wait until after the summer and kind of see where things are and maybe come in then. But if others disagree, I'm happy to move forward, but I'm just kind of calling it as I see it.
All right. Anyone? Any other thoughts on that? I mean, I'm fine waiting until September. We can certainly, revisit in September, or have some guest speakers, or see where things are. But if there's any points that want to be made now, we can certainly do that. Jim?
Yeah. This is Yusuf. So I do really like that point from Andrew because, like, at the end of the day, we can all find something or a set of things in this document that we do like and that we think are in fact necessary. And so the question then becomes, okay, part of our mandate as a board is to say, well, the city said it was going to do X, or this agency said it was going to do X. Did it do it? And so I think getting time to see how it shakes out, to Andrew's point, and it's incumbent on each of the committee members for their issue that they think is essential for the community to kind of see what happens over the next 3, 4, 5 months as it's implemented or not, to then come back to the board and discuss that. So I'm actually fine with the direction that Andrew's recommended.
All right, so you're looking at it more as an accountability measure, and see, they said they were going to do these things. Let's give them a chance to implement them, and then come back and. I mean, that's fine. It was just a question of, is there anything else that should have been in the document, or maybe is not being thought of? Those are the things that we probably would want to consider pre-summer. But if we were just waiting, that's fine too. So we'll go to Andrew, then Seema, then Jim.
Oh, sorry, I almost wasn't ready. Yusuf agreed with me to which I also agree with Youssef in chain. And I actually think that what I would even propose, Matt, is maybe a resolution, if it's appropriate. Maybe we don't need one, but maybe a resolution that calls on the city to report its findings in the fall from the, or some sort of a status report from this. That way we can actually analyze what has occurred, right? So instead of us weighing in now where it's too late because it's already happening anyway and we have no voice and no impact, we say, hey, city, you got to come to us, tell us what you've done with this, what's actually happened, and then we can evaluate from their report, because we didn't have enough time. We didn't have enough time to look at this anyway. They jammed this through. So I feel like we're better served to come back on them later on, but by summoning them to explain, what it is that they've actually achieved in the document.
Okay. Seema?
Yeah, I agree. So I was just gonna comment on Yusuf's point and then kind of agree with Andrew's last comment, which is, I wonder if we could say, we expect you to be, you meaning, we expect the police to be more, transparent and accountable, and and we'll be checking in on you. I don't want to say a foreboding kind of way, but we didn't, I don't know exactly how to phrase it, but I think what Andrew is recommending or potentially suggesting as a resolution to be more, proactive and, tuned in, I think is an interesting one. I like that.
All right. I mean, I think that opens up a big can of worms, and it's fairly broad. I think you really want to be a little bit more specific in what you're asking or wanting to say. But anyway, Jim, your thoughts?
I would just stay with your original theme there, Matt, and draft a resolution with respect to those pages 16 through 20 that specifically address communities and community. It's called community representation and partnership, and limit it to that aspect of a community board resolution, and then following up on Youssef's suggestion, have the two precincts in our community district relate how they are following through with respect to community representation and partnership, and leave the macro elements of this to the side, and just basically stick with our community board. That seems to me, that's pretty much the way you framed it at the beginning, Matt. And I think that's probably the best solution and the best way to go on this. There's a lot of stuff here that's extraneous, but there's a lot of stuff in the outline. If you look through pages 16 to 20 and focus on those, and then ask the 13th and the 17th to tell us in the fall how they're doing, I think that's much more effective than speaking to a broader realm.
So, all right. So it sounds like it sounds like the consensus is we want to hear more in the fall. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we can really demand that through a resolution. I think an invitation might be, it sounds like, I don't know. Is there anybody we can invite for September that would be able to give us an update on the ongoing reforms? It sounds like a resolution. It sounds like we want to hear more, but I don't know that that resolution is the best solution.
Matt, one option might be, if the committee is interested in hearing more feedback about this in several months' time, we sort of spend the summer trying to find who might be the best person to speak on this particular topic. If something, maybe a formal presentation could be organized for September, great. If not, maybe October or November. And if in fact some sort of written request, the committee wants to offer some sort of written request, maybe instead of a resolution, maybe a formal letter of invitation, and something like that it could be sort of a formal presentation, and that would sort of get the point across without having to manufacture a resolution.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea. I think that makes, I think we want more information. A resolution is more like if we have an opinion, and whatnot. So I think in this case, maybe, we would want to submit a letter. I don't know, I see Brian Lafferty is on as well, not to call you out and put you on the spot, Brian, but maybe you could help, facilitate, some sort of, organized feedback, whether it be a presentation or or just some information, to kind of help the committee along, because I think there's a lot of unknowns here.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay, great. So committee members, are we good with that? That maybe we put forth not a resolution, but a formal letter, as Jesus recommended, and then whether it be September, October, November, somewhere in that time frame, we would get clarity as to where things stand, and if things are moving forward. And at that point, maybe we would want to put a resolution out together, looking at certain elements that are being addressed or maybe are not being addressed. Susan?
I agree.
Oh, terrific. Thanks, Seema. Susan, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think that's an excellent solution, Matt, and I think that's the way we should go.
Excellent. So do we need a motion for that, or is the committee consensus considered sufficient?
It depends on the practice of the board. This board typically has not taken any sort of formal motion just to issue a letter. The letter can be drafted over the summer between you, the committee members. Obviously, it will need consultation with the board chair, and we can see in those negotiations, we can see whom would be the best person to send this to. But no, I don't think a formal motion to do this or a vote would be necessary.
Very good. All right, so we'll leave it at that, and then we'll put together a letter over the summer requesting that information, whether it goes to the mayor's office or somebody else. We'll figure that out. But the general consensus is we want more information on what's being done at a high level. So thank you all for your participation in this. I know it's been a very difficult issue to tackle, so many different elements to it. But I think it's, I think we're making a little bit of progress here, month by month. So that brings us to agenda item number 3, which we may want to table this for more information as well. I know Brendan reached out to some of the elected officials and their staff for some information, on what's being done with safety protocols for emergency service and essential workers. So we're talking anybody from EMTs, nurses, to pharmacy workers, grocery store workers, pretty much everybody that was deemed essential during the height of the pandemic, where they had no choice. They couldn't work from home. We need people to do those jobs. And I think the theme there was, if crime is high. I know Andrew said that anecdotally he was attacked at a drugstore. We know that crime, as the officers alluded to earlier, frequently occurs in drugstores, probably more than we all realize. So I do think there, is an opportunity there, but I don't know that we have all the information. So is there anybody that wants to speak on that, or should we table it? Andrew?
There we go. I still strongly believe we should issue some kind of resolution in support of our frontline workers. I think our frontline workers have been through hell. They deserve at least that our community board will speak out and say that we support them, we stand behind them, and that we want to see higher penalties for criminal activity against them. as was said, and I think this is our third meeting that we've said this. If we don't speak up for these people, and it's not about the police per se, but as you said, Matt, our EMTs, our firefighters, our essential workers who put themselves in the line for us, I think we should minimally resolve to support them, restate their importance to the community, and call on the city to increase penalties on those who violate their rights. And we don't even have to get into the details of what those penalties should be. But I think we should be tougher on people when just like when an MTA worker is assaulted, there's a special set of fines just for them, or other types of transit workers. Our frontline workers deserve to be protected. That's my view, full stop. And I would propose that as a resolution.
Okay, are you making a motion?
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to put forth a resolution that states Community Board 6's support of frontline workers and calls on the city to increase penalties for assaults on anyone deemed an essential worker.
All right, is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Susan. So the motion has been put forth and seconded. So we will proceed to a vote.
All right, give me one moment. All right. I will call your name and you will state whether you are in favor, opposed, whether you abstain, or whether you are not entitled to vote. Andrew Gross.
In favor.
Yusuf Khalid.
I am opposed.
Matt Roberts.
In favor.
Frank Scala. Seema Shah.
I'm gonna vote opposed just because I don't understand exactly what we're asking for in that.
Okay, Sean Sherman.
In favor.
Susan Steinberg.
In favor.
All right, with 4 in favor, 2 opposed, the motion carries. Who will be writing this?
Matt, I'll volunteer to write this resolution since I was so passionate about it.
Thanks, Andrew. Yusuf, I see you have your hand up. Did you have a question?
Yeah. I just wanted to share a comment, or I guess more of an orientation. I think in spirit, this is a good idea. My personal orientation is less about adding more punitive outcomes for people and the fines they pay, sentences, those sorts of things. So that's the reason why I voted against. I think it's a fine idea in spirit, but I just don't think we should increase penalties for people in our justice system.
All right, fair enough. So the resolution passed, so it'll go to the full board. So that takes us to the chair's report. I think everything I had to say was integrated into the other items, so I'm going to waive my report other than just say that, again, that we don't plan on having a June meeting, but if something does come up, we can certainly can have a meeting. Same goes for the summer months as well. If there's a public safety issue that does come up, we may need to convene. Obviously, public safety is a little less predictable than some of the other committees. So just keep that in mind. So that brings us to old business and new business. Are there any items of old or new business? All right. Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All right. Thank you very much. The meeting is now adjourned at 7:37 p.m.